This Camino. Father, thanks for this time and for the opportunity to have a pilgrimage. We thank you for this incredible idea of pilgrimage, and I pray, Lord, that as we talk about what this could be in 2022, that we would continue to put our focus on you. In your name, amen. So what I love, I read this recently, and I've been thinking about this in terms of like, what is a pilgrimage? Because really this could be just a walk if we just made it that, but it's not just a walk. A pilgrimage is a journey undertaken in response to a story. So just think about that. A journey undertaken in response to a story. So you have a story. You have a story that led you to this place where you'd think about that. And so this is a journey in response to this story. And so for us, as believers, there is this really sacred path that's been going on for over 1,000 years. This path has been going on that long. So the route that we're talking about this time, so last two years ago, Marissa and I did the Portuguese route along the coast, which is what you're seeing pictures of now, as it just scrolls through. This time we're taking, so this path is maybe 800, 900 years old. The one that we're taking this summer is, I want to say 1,200 years old. It's probably one of the most ancient ones. Now in Spain, and Portugal, and actually all the way up into France, believe it or not, there are about 11 different routes you can go. This is probably the most, I can talk about that in a second. Yeah, that happens. This is probably the most ancient of all of them, and it really starts typically at the border of France and Spain. We're not going to do all of that. We're only talking about 15 days from a place called Lyon. And then they always have the same terminus. They always end in Santiago, at the Cathedral of Santiago, which a picture will come up, and that is where the bones of St. James, Jesus' brother, are buried. Yes, they were stolen, and yes, that's where they were put. That's not where he obviously died or were kept. But it is a very sacred place for lots of reasons that we can talk about in a second. But what I want you to remember or think about as we talk about this is that you have a story, and this is about putting your story into this pilgrimage to understand the larger story that God has for you, that God is doing. So I can pause there and turn it over. We're filming this for people who can't be here. To you. You can just hold it if you want.
This is very cute. Well, this is what I'll say. The part where your story interconnects and with Jesus, that is very true. But here's what's so different about this. Doing this is different than having a quiet day where you say, I'm going to go and just be with Jesus for a few hours. I'm just going to go and do that. Although those days are special and they can be refreshing, and sometimes you hear from God in a special way, sometimes it's stressful because you're like, I got 4 hours. So Jesus, we got to do this. Quick. And the beauty of this is that there's no time limit. It's 15 days with literally nothing to do but walk and think and pray and sing if you want. And sometimes it's very really you and Jesus. And sometimes it was like me and Taylor Swift. We were just kind of jamming out and walking. And that was great too. It
was awesome that Taylor was on that trip.
Taylor's really everywhere you need her. But it was... You just have time. There's not a rush. There isn't a rush, and there's no distraction because it's literally just one foot in front of the other. And you can see they're all different. Sometimes you're in town, sometimes you're in big cities, sometimes you're in a vineyard, sometimes you're walking beside a river, over a river, or bridges with buses coming at you. It's all different. So every day is a little different, and it has a different sense to it. But it is one of the most contemplative and peaceful times of my life was doing this, because you really don't have anything else to do. It's not a vacation. A vacation, you're going to the hot spots. In a vacation, you got to go see the thing, and you got to get the tour, and you got to eat the thing, and you got to, and don't get me wrong, you all know I love to travel. That's great. But this is different than that because you're not going to any hot spots. You are literally in a tiny little village. You may not know what's on the menu because it might be so small, it's not in English. And it's just time to take it in and to see Jesus in a different context, to see Jesus in a different place. And every day there are churches along the way, because in Spain there's a church, truly many on every corner. I mean many. And as you're walking, sometimes there'll be a little church in the middle of the woods. You can't even believe it's there. Sometimes you'll just be walking past, you go through a city and there's a big cathedral. Either way, Jonathan and I made it our commitment that every time we saw a church, if it was open, and they were almost always open, only I think twice were the doors locked. If it was open, we just walked in, sometimes for 5 minutes. Sometimes we would just, me and my candles, I'm always lighting a candle, and we'd take off our backpacks and we would just pray for a few minutes. And mostly because we were away from our kids, we would mostly pray for the kids when we were there. That was a good reminder to stay connected and to pray for them. And we would just, whatever was happening that day, that we would continue to hear Jesus, that we would continue to grow closer together as a couple, and then we'd move on. Sometimes we'd stay for a while. Sometimes we'd walk around and we'd look at all the stained glass, and we would, really kind of even soak in that sacred space. Sometimes it didn't look sacred at all. Sometimes it looked like a little hole in the wall, truly, just a little tiny, 4 foot by 4 foot, just a little altar, and that was all it was. And we'd really just stay there for a second and say a prayer and move on. But every day to have that chance, sometimes more than once a day, 2 or 3 times a day, to focus and just pause, it's unlike anything in your regular life. There's not a substitute for it. That's what I'll say. There's not a substitute for it, because you can't create that experience. Never are you going to have 15 days just you and Jesus.
So what I wanted to say a little bit about that is, so what's an average day look like? And actually the days are relatively they're kind of all the same. You wake up pretty early in the morning. You usually need to be on the road walking somewhere, probably no later than 7:30, to be honest. That means you have to get up before that and you don't have to have eaten, because you probably will walk to a place that you'll want to eat at. But you're already out walking usually by, sometimes we were earlier than that, but usually it was about 7:30 that we were on the road walking. And then we'd come across a place that maybe had breakfast. We'd stop, we'd eat breakfast, and then we'd just keep walking. Every time we stop, of course, we take our packs off. Now the difference in this trip that we're doing this summer is we are working with a company that you can bring your bag and they port it every day to the next hotel. So you don't have to carry the packs that you're seeing us carry. That's all we had. That was all of our gear. So all you are going to have to carry is a backpack with some rain gear, because it probably will rain. Now rain gear can be lots of different things. It can be everything from just a poncho to, you can go to the full rain jacket, pants. That's fine. All you're going to need though is rain gear, a water bottle, which you can actually buy there. You could buy a liter disposable bottle and just fill that up repeatedly. And that's it. I can't think of anything else. But, yeah.
Whatever personal items you need in the day.
Yeah.
You're going to want chapstick. You're going to want your money. You need to keep your passport on you at all times when you're in another country. Just basics.
But nothing with weight.
No, there'll be no weight. The only thing you'll be carrying is your water. And the truth is, you don't have to get a huge water, because we can just refill as you go. Sometimes you refill. Europe is filled with these very old, the Romans put them in, but these very old fountains. And you can just, if it's not good water, there'll be a sign that says not to drink it. But most times, we only saw that sign once or twice as well, that most times it's just beautiful, fresh water coming down out of the mountains. And you just fill it up. There's a few pictures of us just filling up our water bottles at various places. And then sometimes you go in, I would have a restaurant fill it up, can you bring me a water? And I just fill it in. So that's an easy, but that's really all you have to bring.
So
Change
of socks, yeah. Okay, so you're carrying that stuff, and then you start to walk. Now, for Marissa and I, some days we would begin by talking about whatever, but when you have this kind of extended time and extended conversations, there would be some times where we would either run out of things to talk about, or we would just be done talking. And sometimes one of us would put an earbud in and we would listen to sometimes music, but we also started listening to books together. So we would put a book on, the same book, and we would listen to that, so that when we stopped for lunch or for dinner, we would discuss that book, and that was enjoyable. Additionally, sometimes, now on the Portuguese Camino that you're seeing here, there were not a lot of people. So, and that's actually why we picked it. We didn't want to be around a lot of people. The Francais route that we're picking is much, much more well-traveled. And so sometimes you just start talking to the people next to you. And those are some of the most remarkable discussions that I can tell you about. We've had some really amazing ones. I'll let Marissa tell you about one in a second. Sometimes they start on the road, sometimes they just start at the restaurant that you're at, because everybody, you're wearing your backpack and you have a little shell on it, and the little shell, oh yeah, your feet will get beat up. Your shell tells everybody else that you're a pilgrim, that you're on the pilgrim's way. So when you stop at a restaurant and somebody else has a backpack, well, clearly they're also a pilgrim, and the shell tells you the same thing. And you just strike up a conversation with them. Where are you from? I will tell you, in our trip, we met very, very few Americans. We met almost exclusively Russians and Germans. We only met one American couple at the very end that I remember. No, and the guy from Oregon, the IT guy.
I know, and the two girls.
Oh, and the two girls right in the beginning, right, yeah. So, but mostly it was not Americans. And I will tell you that they also, many of them have their own reasons for doing it. Many of them are not there for spiritual reasons at all. It's a gap year, they're killing time. Sometimes people had a really hard thing happen. They lost a loved one. They had a traumatic breakup, a bad breakup. When we first started walking, I was very interested to hear from other people, hey, why are you walking? And so why are you doing the Camino? And I realized quickly, that's a kind of a personal question. And so I stopped asking that question, and what I discovered is when you're having lunch with somebody or when you're walking next to somebody for a while, it'll just kind of bubble up. I didn't expect that, though. I thought it would just be like, well, it'd just be fun. Like, hey, why are you doing this? And it's different for everybody, and some people hold it quite personally. So that was really interesting. But some of your best conversations will be at night when we would get to either a hotel or we were staying in hostels. This trip will not be staying in hostels. Everybody will have a hotel room. You'll be sharing with one other person. There are a couple triple options if you want that. But at dinner, you start meeting other people, and so, to you. What was his name?
We've forgotten this guy's name, and I feel terrible about it, but we have practiced his story so many times because we never wanted to forget it. And I tell the story to my students at Forest High School every year as well. So we were this was a hostel that was built in the 1500s. It was somebody's home. It had been in their family. It was just this beautiful place, and on this big hill, and you could hear the sheep, and it was incredible. So we were just kind of sitting around and drinking wine and talking to the people that were there. There was only one other American. There was an Australian guy, and there was an English guy, and some Portuguese, and then there was another guy. And so I asked him, oh, where are you from? And he said, Germany. He was clearly not German. So we waited a little bit, and then everyone was kind of sharing, and then he said, I think I might have probed and asked, oh, but where are you? You were born in Germany? No, he was born in Syria. So, and again, 2 years ago, and you think about all the Syrian refugees. So we waited a few minutes, and he started to tell his story. And he tells, the vulnerability. I think you might have said, oh, what made you want to do this? And he said, I needed some alone time in my head, something like that. And so he tells the entire story of how he fled Syria. He tells the story of his brother being killed by bombs. Nobody knows if they were American or Syrian. And at that point, his family wants him gone. They want him to flee because he's 16, 17 years old, and they're going to enlist him in the Syrian army. They don't want him there. He protested with some friends and went to jail, and there was a lot going on. So his parents said, we got to get you out. He gets smuggled in a car, in the trunk of a car. Partway through that story, he says, and the other person in the trunk, and we're like, there's two people in this trunk. He's at a warehouse for 1 week by himself, just waiting until this smuggler can fill up the boat with people. So then he gets smuggled across. He gets to Italy. The Italians say, we don't want you. And so keep on going. So he then has to find his way, and the goal was to get to Italy. So he thought he had made it, 17 years old, all alone, been doing this for about 3 weeks, finally gets to Italy, and they tell him you got to keep on going. And somehow he hitchhikes and walks and finds his way into Germany, where he then is at a refugee camp for 18 months, not allowed to work, not allowed to go to school. And by the time we met him, he had just finished all but his final year of architecture school. He had finished his degree and was getting his master's in architecture, and he just finally needed some peace in his mind. He needed to go be alone, and he made the choice to go and do this. And it was the most incredible and vulnerable story, and you just realize that it just gives you such a broader sense of the world and of what God is doing in all these places and where people are hurting. And it just, we heard some amazing stories. That was certainly probably the most powerful, because you just see this young guy who's already been through so much. I mean, he was in his early 20s. But that's the kind of thing that just happens organically. You couldn't have orchestrated that. I couldn't have flipped through a phone book, does anyone do that anymore, and tried to find a Syrian refugee who'd be willing to tell me their story. You can't orchestrate those kinds of things. They just have to happen. And we did have many interesting conversations like that. That was certainly a standout, though.
Yep. So that's a beautiful part of this trip. Another couple aspects that you might be seeing, you've seen a couple pictures of me there. I have some tape on my legs. So as most of you know, I've done some distance running. I've never had a single injury in my life until I was on these cobblestone streets. The unevenness of these streets did something to my left shin, and I had shin splints, which I've never gotten before, and those were excruciating. And so much so that one day, I couldn't go on. I couldn't keep walking, and so we just took the bus. And guess what, y'all? That's fine. It's totally fine. It's allowed. There's no rule on this, okay? So we just took the bus on to the next spot, and we were in this small little city, and I was hobbling down the street, and we were next to this shop window, and it had pictures of feet that were in distress, like mine. And I said, I am hurting so much, let's go inside. And we went inside. No one spoke English. We finally found somebody who was a physical therapist in the back who said, yes, I can help you. She took me in the back. She worked on my shin splints. I've never had those before, but if you have, it's excruciating when they work on them. She rubbed them out, and I did cry. Out loud, I cried out because it hurt so much. We were done, and I said, okay, well, and while she's doing this, I'm thinking, this is going to be, because in the States, how much would that cost you? Well, it doesn't matter because you need to get fixed. So I'm thinking, okay, at first I was like, okay, this is $100. Okay, now this is $300. Okay, now we're at $700. In my head, I'm just racking this up. I said, how much do we owe you? And then she was so quizzical. She was like, we have socialized medicine is $0. And I just left. There was no charge.
No, we didn't pay in. And she was like, oh, you're fine.
Yeah, so we just walked out, and it was, I was able to continue in such a great way. But I want to tell you that a couple things here. This is what a pilgrimage is not, is a death march. And so if at some point you are tired or you can't go on that day, that's okay. Our hotel's already paid for that night. We're going to walk, on average, something like 13 miles. Some days are quite long, like 19 miles. Some days are quite short, like 8.5. So the average is somewhere around 13 a day. If there's a day that you can't do it, call an Uber. It will take you about 20 minutes to get there. Or get on the bus. It will honestly take you 20 minutes to get there, where it will take the rest of us 8 to 10 hours to get there. But by car, it was always very discouraging because I would look on the Google Maps in the morning, and by car, our distance was about 25 minutes away. By Camino, it was going to be the full day. So that was very common. But if you, and many of the hotels that we're staying at have pools, which we did not have on this. So if you want to get ahead and just sit in the pool in the day, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, you have a couple things that Marissa's mentioned here, one of which is called, you have your regular passport, of course, but then you also have a Camino Passport, which a couple of times has showed up here, the picture has. You have to, in the last 100 kilometers, which is 60 miles, you have to get 2 passport stamps a day, and you can get those almost anywhere. Every church has one, every coffee shop has one, every restaurant has one, even the pharmacies and grocery stores have stamps. And you have to get 2 of those a day. So if when you get to Santiago, if you want what's called a Compostela, it's a certificate of completion. Not everybody cares about those, but if you want one of those, when you go to the pilgrims something, I don't know what the name of it is, you show them your passport. They do check it. They absolutely check it. They will look at the stamps, make sure the dates match, they know where the stamps are from, and if you haven't done enough, you don't get a Compostela. I was really quite shocked. I thought it was going to be all perfunctory. It's not perfunctory. Now, for what we're going to be doing is 15 days. It's much longer than that, so you don't need to worry about it. But we do have to worry about those last 60 miles, getting 2 a day. My passport is in my office. I framed it because I liked it so much. I think it's really fun. And I also did get a Compostela, and I framed it too with my passport. Marissa has her passport framed in her classroom for her kids to see. But if that isn't important to you, that's fine. You don't have to do it. It's not that big of a deal. You can just walk. We liked that idea. I love the idea of stamps. I think it's fun. We've always collected stamps whenever we've gone places. So if you want to do that, great. So, okay, so that's the walking. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Along with the day-to-day and what the day looks like. So we get up early, but then you stopped at that. So when you walk and you look and you listen and you do whatever you're doing, the difference between this and like backpacking, like in the Appalachian Mountains, is there's restaurants everywhere you go. Everybody has like a glass of wine for €1.50 and a beer for €1, €2. And it's much more relaxing than that. There's no, like, you're not carrying your food on your back. You're not carrying a stove or a sleeping bag or anything like that. You're just walking until you see a place you want to stop. So sometimes we would stop and have a full lunch. We would we're hungry early, we're gonna have a big lunch and we're just gonna do it. Other times we're like, we don't have very far to go today. Let's just eat when we get there. And we would go into a grocery store. We would just go into a grocery store, we get some bread, some cheese. They'll open a bottle of wine for you. You can walk out with an open bottle of wine. And I will be carrying a small little metal wine glass with me, so that will be in my backpack. And you can just sit down on the side of the river and carry your food with you. Sometimes we'd eat breakfast and get a little extra and know that that's what we were gonna eat for the day. And so I tried to put out a lot of pictures of food so you could kind of see. There's just a variety of, because that's a concern for a lot of people. A lot of people are like, well, what will I eat? Whatever you eat, it's probably going to be amazing. Some places it'll be very simple food because you're just in a little village and it really is like farm to table kind of thing. And some places it'll be a huge course meal and you can just keep ordering and, you can get the, appetizers and the whole deal. It just depends on what you want to do, but that's it. You just kind of eat when you're hungry, and we don't all have to stay together. There's not going to be this is not like a link, like when you see the preschoolers holding onto the rope kind of thing. Like, we don't have to do that. Everybody just go at your own pace and stop where you want to stop, and it's your journey. The only times that we really will for sure be together will be morning and night. We'll be there in the evenings. Everybody will probably eat together because in this package, most dinners are included, so we'll all eat together at the hotels.
Actually, let me say that. I forgot about that. So in this package, all your breakfasts are included. I forgot about that. So that's all paid for, and 10 of the 15 dinners are included. The reason they're included is because some of the places we're going are so small, there's nowhere to eat but that place. And so you want to pre-buy those things, these little villages. And so we want to pre-buy those. But some of them, there's 5 nights where there's not dinner. Lunch, of course, is going to be wherever you want. But as Marissa said, you can walk with who you want to walk with or with no one at all. And then at night when we're all together, obviously when we have dinners together, we'll eat together. And then what I'd like us to do every night is have evening prayer together, and then maybe every 3 or 4 days have communion together at night. Good news, I can do both those things. But Deacon Mary's coming too, and so she can lead those things as well. So we'll have communion every so often. We won't have communion in the church, obviously, because those are Catholic churches, and I'm not Catholic, so that's not kosher with them, so I'm going to respect that. At the end, though, when you get to Santiago, when we were there, Santiago was under renovations, so you couldn't they have a pilgrim's mass every day, and it's literally 1,000+ people. It's amazing. And it's in Santiago, but Santiago was under renovation, so they had it, and they have several churches nearby. We went to that pilgrim's mass, and they're very clear. If you're not Catholic, do not come forward for communion. And they say it in every language. They're not kidding. So some of the people that we were with, that we had met along the way, they were Catholic, and I was like, that stinks. But we can go back and we can do our own communion if we want that night. Santiago is the terminus, so obviously once we get there, we're kind of on your own. In the little cards that I handed out that you guys have all seen, if anybody wants one of these, what I've already told you, it's $22.50. That's your hotel, that's your bag porting, that's your most of your meals, not all of your meals. What it doesn't include is your airfare, because everybody wants to do airfare differently. Some of you may want to go early, some of you may want to stay late. Santiago, if you're curious, is not far from San Sebastian, which is a pretty epic epic coastal town, so you could easily catch a train. How would you get to Lyon, where we're going to start? Very simple. You're going to fly into Milan, and then you're going to take the train over to Lyon. There are multiple trains a day. So we're going to start on June 15th, I'm pretty sure is what we're saying. So we said June 15th is almost, I'm sure of it, which means that you need to arrive probably on June 14th so that we can start walking on the 15th. Is that what it says, 19th? Thank you. I got it wrong. Yes, 19th. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. June 19th. So, which means that means we're starting the walk on the 19th, which means you need to arrive on the 18th, the night before. I don't think we have a hotel room for that night, but I can get them if we want. We just got to check. We just got to tell our people what we want to do. But we'll walk on the 19th, and that's where it begins. On our website, which the QR code is there, plus our website's there, Katie's put together a really helpful video. There's a picture of every single hotel that we're going to. What I can tell you is pretty much every other day, the hotel is awesome. Which means every other day, the hotel is, all right, it's fine, it's not great. But like the first night's hotel, it's a castle. Yeah, and so like every other night, the hotel is fantastic. So if whatever night you don't like it, don't worry, the next night will be great. And so that's more or less how it works. Okay, anything else before we go to questions?
I wanted to say, but I might have forgotten. About getting there, you do not want to start jet lagged. So you really do want to get there a day early. Typically, flights to Europe, you arrive in the late morning, stay awake all day, and then try to get to sleep at a normal time so you wake up fairly adjusted, because otherwise that first day is hard. Even if it were only 12 miles, which would be a low mileage day, it's the first day, it wears you out. After a couple of days, you're kind of into it. You're like, I can do this forever. But the first few days, they kind of wipe you out. So you want to be as rested as you can. This is the other thing I want to say. If you have the time, I know this is already going to be over 2 weeks for most people, and that's a lot. But if you have the time, once you are already on the continent, like, we bought tickets for, I think, $25 from Santiago to Barcelona. Plane tickets, not train, plane. So we just flew, and then we just added on a couple days in Barcelona because it's beautiful, and we did want to try all that tapas, and we did want to see we went to the Sagrada Familia. So if you're already there and you can add on a couple days, it's very cheap to travel once you're on the continent, and I just wanted to add that on there so you know. And
I'll just say the airlines are way cheaper than the trains. The trains are fun, but the airlines are way, way cheaper. So like, we flew from Santiago to Barcelona for $25 each, and then we flew from there. I mean, you can fly the hoppers. Or the two airlines are EasyJet and Ryanair. They are legit no frills, but you didn't pay anything. I'm not even sure how that covers your gas, and you can go almost anywhere on the continent. So if you want to stay extra, of course that's on you. Sure. Pretty fun. Yeah, it's very cheap. It's very, very cheap. Yeah, going over to Barcelona for those couple of days was wonderful, and we can give you some tips on that too if you want. To see the Sagrada Familia is epic. It's a lifetime deal.
Oh, I have goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. We'd not show you any of those pictures, but we have them if you want to see them. Okay, so now your turn. Ask what kind of questions would you like to ask. Oh, one thing I should find to tell you is before we go, we're going to have 4 meetings together, probably online because I don't know where everyone's going to be. Because some people who are going to watch this aren't in town. So we're going to probably do a Zoom meeting, really to talk about the idea of story. I'm going to ask you to really look into your story and begin to dialogue with God about what this is about for you. What are you looking to have a discussion about? It doesn't mean that you have to look to have answers. It's not making goals. It's just thinking your story through as we're on this pilgrimage of a larger story. So we're going to have 3 or 4 meetings over we have several months to cover your story, but also to cover some gear, because you may have some gear questions, like what kind of shoes and blah, blah, blah. We'll go over some gear questions, like do you want to bring walking sticks? The answer is yes, especially for those cobblestone streets. And periodically you are in some mountainous terrain, so you're going to want that every so often. So, okay, I'll pause. Questions, thoughts, comments?
In terms of mountainous?
Yeah.
No,
the Pyrenees is much before that. So we're starting in Lyon. It's much flatter, but I mean, it is true. You're walking through fields. There are several YouTube videos that I encourage you to watch. YouTube videos on the Francais route. Go watch those videos. They're quite short. Some of them are really dorky because they're just homemade stuff. And you can get a sense of the last 15 days from Lyon into Santiago. It is easier than the first half of the Francais route, because that is the Pyrenees. But you're still walking. It's not the Appalachian Trail. It is not. Not even close. Not even close. Many times you're walking on just paved streets. but sometimes you're not.
How many people, since we'll be working with another company,
Mhm.
total will be in our?
It's just us. So there's nobody else in our group. This group, it's an interesting group. It is a tour company, but in a very specific way. They only do pilgrimages. So they're not selling you a package. They're not giving us a tour guide. All they're doing, and this is the best part to be honest, is they know what hotels we can go to. And they have figured out the distances. And that is a bunch of work. So when Chi and I did it, we did some of that, but sometimes we couldn't go as far as we want, or we go as far as we thought we were going to go, and we're like, well, we can still go more, and so we just keep walking. So we didn't book ourselves. We just walked until, and that when you do that, when you show up, you got to buy whatever's available. And so there were some times that we wanted to stay at some hostels, and they were either crowded or gross, and we said no, and so then we ended up at a pricey hotel, because that was all that was left. Or walking farther.
miles.
Yeah, we had to walk even farther to find some place that was available.
And then we had to keep going because there wasn't a place to stay.
That's right, that's right. So this company has booked us in advance at these places, so there will be no one else with us in our group. I called them recently and said, because we've gotten a decent amount of interest in this, more than I expected, to be honest. And I said, what if we get 20 people? Can you handle that? And they're like, yeah, that's not a problem. That's easy for us. So there's really no limitation to us, but it will only be us. Good question.
What are the present COVID requirements for
Good.
people who are going?
Good. So the question is, what are the present COVID requirements to go to Spain? Spain is not like some of the other European countries like Austria, which is closing down currently. They are fairly open right now, but the big thing is vaccination. If you are vaccinated, you're going to be fine. You will need to bring your vaccination card. If you are unvaccinated, please see me, because this trip will be much, much more difficult. It may be, frankly, impossible. Because getting in and getting out is very tricky for unvaccinated folk.
Also, I don't think you can get back into the United States
Yeah, that's what
if
I'm
you've
saying.
been away and unvaccinated. I don't think you can get back home. So you might be able to go, but you need to pack up
You
a lot.
would, but you'd have
'cause-
to quarantine. It would
yeah,
be very difficult.
yeah. It's
So the,
not to make it a political issue, but you need to be vaccinated.
Vaccinated is not going to run into any
No.
red flags.
No,
along the
it'll be,
way.
no.
You
If you show
may-
up vaccinated on the 18th, you're going to be fine.
Some we'll have to watch because everything changes by the week, but typically you'll have to have a negative test and a vaccine card. So
Yeah.
you get a test before you go, 2 or 3 days, you get a test, and then sometimes you have to get one before you come home as well, because the United States also has that as a policy. But I will tell you that we traveled to 3 countries last summer, and it was still fine. We just had to keep getting tests. So it's not, and they have them at the airports.
Well, and sometimes they just require it. You show up at a place, and they're like, they just segmented me out one time. They're like, you over there to get tested. And I had a test
A few hours.
6 hours before. I'm like, here's my test from 6 hours ago. We don't care. Go over there. They tested me again. And so they jam that thing to your brain. So you're just going to get tested a bunch, basically. And if you're vaccinated, it's not that big of a problem. I hate the test, but whatever. That's their rule, so I'm going to do what they say. Good question, though. Other questions? Yes, Jay.
Some of the podcasts that I've been listening to are really entertaining and informative. And there's a common theme that the Camino provides. When you're hungry,
That's right.
there's water. Does it provide bathrooms?
Okay, so the question is about bathrooms along the trail, and yes, that's very simple, actually. I mean, for one, you're stopping at all these restaurants, but two, I will say that there's very regularly porta potties. Now, they're not awesome because they're porta potties. Okay. Now, sometimes they are upgraded porta potties, and what I mean by that is they are concrete structures that are, or they're like almost like little mobile homes. They have electricity and stuff, and they park them. I remember that on the Portuguese Route a couple times, and some people were in there like in the sinks taking showers, and I was like, oh, geez, because these are people who are trying to avoid staying in a hotel room. But yes, plenty of bathrooms, never an issue. That I remember. Do you remember any bathroom
No,
issues?
I go to the bathroom every 2 hours. I mean, at a minimum. So yeah, it's fine.
I
I
don't-
mean, have I ever gone in the woods? Yes. That'll also could happen, but it's fine.
Yeah. Good question, Jay. Other questions? Other thoughts?
We'll go over all the gear
Yes.
later.
Yeah, we'll go over all the gear. Yeah, we're not going to do gear today because it may be boring to you what you need. You won't need a ton of stuff, to be honest. You really won't. I mean, the key essentials are some rain gear, some good shoes, some trekking poles, And then really the rest of it's on you. I mean, if you want really breathable clothing, if you're a person who doesn't like to overheat, then I would recommend getting some of the dry fit high wicking stuff. We have a bunch of that stuff because we've done this so many times. We can recommend our stuff, but sometimes people, I mean, everybody has their own flavor. You know what you like. The most essential elements are for sure your shoes and socks, without question. Your shoes and socks are super important. They need to be lightweight, and those socks need to be they need to be the best socks that you can buy. I can tell you which ones because I use them for my distance running. These are
Recovery shoes.
Oh yeah, recovery shoes. So you want to bring a pair of
Some kind of like whatever you
what
wear.
are those things called?
He wears UFUs.
But there's those
like some kind of a
Crocs. Yeah, kind of like Crocs. Yeah, a Croc shoe.
kind of a just where your feet can spread
Yeah, so
out.
when you get to the place at night, and even at lunch, we would always take our shoes and socks off.
And everybody
Always.
does. You're not the only one. You'll be at a restaurant and everybody will have their shoes off. Outside. You sit outside. Don't take your shoes off indoors. That's still.
No.
No. Some people do. Some people trade off. We didn't because we were only going 12 days, 15 days. We wore the same pair of shoes.
If
But-
your shoes get wet, which could happen in a rainstorm, of course, then you're just walking in wet shoes. That's why you want to have dry socks for the next day.
Yeah.
So
Or even the next once it stops raining. Like
Yeah.
stop somewhere, put on some dry socks and
it's
keep
very
going.
possible that your shoes get wet. Okay. You got to keep going.
But I want to add on when Jay mentioned she's been listening to that there was like it provides that the Camino provides, and it's like when you're on the Appalachian Trail, there's a saying that there's trail magic, and somebody will leave something that they didn't, and you just find it right when you need it. I had a friend who had a migraine, and we found Advil just on just sitting there. So trail magic, and that happens here. And the other beautiful thing about it is not only is there just the thing you needed right when you needed it, but it's a celebration everywhere you go. For us, this is a once in a lifetime thing. For them, the Camino walks through their town every single day.
It has for
Somebody walks
millennia.
through their town for their entire life. People are walking through their city, and so in my mind, I think they'd be sick of us. But instead, you cannot walk anywhere without people saying, "Have a good Camino, bon Camino," every day. They know who you are. They can recognize you, and everyone is celebrating you. It's like, when you're walking down the aisle leaving your wedding, like everybody is just celebrating you all day long. They recognize the significance and that it is your once in a lifetime kind of experience, and they're just a part of it. Yeah.
You mentioned that Milan was the arrival airport. Is that the same airport for departure?
It depends on you.
But what would be, what's the easiest?
Yes. Yeah, totally. Milan's the easiest. Yeah, to go back to the States Milan's very easy. Unless you're going to go into Germany for any reason, and then your departure airport should probably be Frankfurt. Frankfurt is out of Germany is super easy. It's the easiest in my opinion. But if you're going to stay in Spain and not go anywhere else, Milan's great. Barcelona would be great too, honestly. Either one of those are there. And by easiest, I mean cheapest and the most number of flights. That's what when I say easiest, that's what I'm looking at is what's the least expensive and the widest option for you to do it. So I would say Barcelona or Madrid.
And to get back from
said
Santiago
Milan.
to either Barcelona or Milan, is train or defer?
Plane. Take a hopper. It's so cheap. It's
Either
so
one.
cheap and it's so
yeah,
easy.
the train's cooler,
The-
but it's slower and more expensive.
Yeah, obviously the train's relaxing and beautiful, but it's also a full day. So that's one day, one more day that you've kind of lost. And it's expensive. It'll be a couple $100 in
Yeah.
comparison with like 20 or 30. So
right.
for us, we just do the hopper.
Good question though. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say Milan is a great city to leave out of, and yeah, basically any city that you know probably has a lot of flights going to it. Because a lot of other people want to go there, and so you just figure that out. I can give you, if you sign up, if you say yes, I'm doing this, I can give you some of the websites that we use to book our travel. There are lots of them out there, so you can do your own thing. If you want to use your points from your credit card, whatever you want, you do you. That's why we're not doing that part of the trip, because everybody wants to do it their own way. And I've been told by other people who lead these trips, airfare is the most complicated thing, so I'm not doing it. I'm doing the part that I know how to do, and you do you.
But we do have a lot of tips and tricks
travel.
on international travel. So if you are like, I've never done this before, I don't really know how to do this, definitely sit down. I mean, we can walk you through some of the ways that we do it. Our trick is to go to the cheapest, just to get to the continent, whatever's the cheapest ticket, and then take a hopper to the city you need to be in. So Jonathan's suggesting Milan, which is great. Also, Milan's beautiful. But if it's not the cheapest, find the cheapest and take a hopper to wherever you're starting from. That's that's what we usually do.
For reasons I don't really understand right now, the cheapest is Athens.
And
So-
also, it does not suck.
So flying into Athens is crazy cheap, and then a hopper from Athens over to Milan, you're talking about $50. So you add another $50 to your travel, or
Leon.
oh yeah, well no, you have to take the train to Lyon. You can't.
Oh.
You still have to go to Milan to get the train from Milan. So you still have to take a hopper from Athens to Milan and then a train to Lyon. There's no airport in Lyon. You have to train into there. So. But I mean, that's what it was. Athens has been the cheapest for the last 9 months. I don't know why. It's just super cheap. I think because Greece is so hungry for tourists, and so they're finding a way to subsidize that cost for tourists. Your call. I mean, if you don't want to go see Athens for a day, fine. Yeah, it's cool, right? Athens is cool. And if you flew into Athens 2 days early, you could recuperate from the travel in Athens. Your body's adjusted, then you take the hopper over, and you have to schedule that, which, again, we can help you with. We have some websites that we trust and use to do. Good. Other questions? Yeah, Jay.
You're going to hit on training at some point during our little thing.
Sure. Yeah, what walking is? Yeah, absolutely. I would say right now, if you can walk between 4 and 5 miles without hurting, then you're fine. You're going to be fine. We'll do some more training, but you need to be able to do 4 or 5 miles without anything really hurting too bad. It's usually after 5 or so miles that things are hurting. Well, that's normal. I mean, that's going to happen.
And you're going to take a big rest. We'll walk 4 or 5 miles, and then you sit down for an hour, and then you do 4 or 5 more. So it's, you're rested. Yeah, lunch, the shoes are off, you sit down, 2 glasses of wine. It helps. It helps. It numbs the
Is
toes.
always much more enjoyable.
Yes.
I mean, it always was. I mean, a beer or two in the afternoon. I mean, at lunch.
Oh,
maybe
it doesn't
after
suck. And no one's going to be like, what are those people day drinking? They're all day drinking. So it's a different culture. It's a different culture. So it's fine. So it's 5 miles because you just do it in 5 mile increments, really. And honestly, you can walk 5 miles in a couple hours pretty easily. It's just not, you're finished. Even on the longest days, we're still finished by 3 or 4. And you've got the whole evening. We'd shower, we put on our comfy shoes.
You have to
and
be
we just
diligent. You have to be diligent on those days. Because we have 2 right now. We have 2 scheduled days at 19 miles.
But the days that are 15.
That is hard. 19 miles is hard.
That's terrible. I'm angry at 17. I'll tell you that right now.
There's
Don't
always
talk to
Uber,
me.
right? There's always
Yeah.
Uber. Yeah. So if you want to Uber those 2 days, fine. It's fine.
But on the normal 15,
All the days that we're staying at the nice hotel.
just get there quick.
Yeah. That's smart. Okay. Any other questions?
So the deposit is due February, something.
Something. Is not on here? Katie, you remember? Yeah, it's like at the end of February. Yeah, the deposit, and it's 40%.
February 18th.
Oh, February 18th, good. February 18th, the deposit, 40% is due at that point. Yes, absolutely, that long to decide, for sure. I'd like to have one meeting before that, just to starting our meeting schedule. So if you know, I mean, what I would say is this: if you know, you don't have to give me any cash, but if you know that you're in by, let's say, January 15th or even the first of the year, that'd be very helpful, because then we can start having our meetings. And if for whatever reason you need to back out, that's okay. And that even includes your deposit. The company, because I have to give this money onto the company, obviously. That's who I'm giving the money to. So if you pay, what they right now, because of COVID, they're offering is a full refund. So up until 14 days before. But I think it's extremely generous. 14 is great. Now, you know who won't do that for you is your airfare. Once you buy that, you are flying those dates, period. But the company is being great about this. So even if you pay that 40% and you need to back out a month before, no sweat. I can get you a full refund.
So another option on airfare is either, there's different tiers.
Of course.
Give your credit or whatever, or to buy trip insurance.
Yes. Yeah, I would recommend
Yes.
at this. We have lost tickets.
Yeah. So Jay's question is about trip insurance, whether or not you should get it. Yes. For airfare, for sure. But you don't need it for this stuff because the company understands that everybody's in a difficult spot right now. They're just hoping for business, let's be honest. So they're being super flexible about this. So that's why we're doing this.
So one final.
Yes, ma'am.
Today. I have more, but when we finish at Santiago de Compostela, are we like, so when do we make our travel arrangements? Like 5 o'clock that afternoon?
I wouldn't. No. Yeah. You're gonna want to stay that night, and we can tell you some places to stay. Actually, we already have a room booked. This already has our room booked that night, so you're set that night. If you want to stay longer, there's a place right adjacent to the church that is an old pilgrim hospital that's been there for 900 years, and we stayed there last time. It is awesome. It's expensive, but it is awesome. I totally recommend doing it. So yeah, I would say you want to stay. We're going to stay at least one night. And you could conceivably, if you wanted to leave or go see something else, you could leave the very next day on the 5th. Yeah, the 5th of July. You could leave the 5th. Yeah, you can't leave the 4th, though. You won't make it. Because we're going to walk in on the 4th.
And it's a really special day. Like, you want to
It
go
really
to
is.
service. You want to you'll catch up with people that you met along the trail. You know, we were running into people. It was a big reunion. Everyone's hugging and crying, and you see people. I haven't seen you in 2 weeks. I didn't think you'd make it. Like, you passed us. I don't know how we got here.
When you start watching the videos online, the YouTube stuff, you can see people hugging strangers or not strangers, but people they weren't hiking with in the plaza. Because the plaza at Santiago, it goes all the way around the church. It's four-sided, and so you just run into people that you saw and that you had a conversation with. And you're like, oh, wow, I mean, isn't this great? I'll be honest, I mean, when we walked in and we were holding hands, I was crying. It's very moving. And I asked everybody I knew, like, hey, did you cry when you walked in? And everyone's like, yeah, I cried. Because it's just so meaningful that you've been thinking about this moment in your head, and it doesn't matter if you've seen pictures of it. It doesn't even matter if you've done it before. You just did it again, and you had another journey with Jesus. And that's what's cool about this.
And you really do feel like the presence of the saints that came before. I was really overwhelmed with, we're just walking in their footsteps. Like, we're on their shoulders. They preserved the faith all these years, and it was really overwhelming, that sense of just being there where people had trod before. I don't know, it was very special. After we showered and got to our room and put our stuff down, we walked back out and we went up to one of the side streets that just kind of flows into, and we just went right at the edge, right where people were walking in. We sat at a cafe outdoors and we just watched people for a couple hours just walking in. I mean, we just cried the whole time watching people.
Walking in,
yeah.
And you're crying with them.
And then we'd see them meet up with somebody. We could see into the plaza and watch that. I mean, it was just really
It was
special.
like watching a family reunion almost. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, average temperatures?
Cold in the morning, warm in the afternoon, cool in the evening.
Yep.
That's, so
want
you're going to layer. You need to layer. I expected it to be a little warmer, and I had to buy a jacket in Portugal, which is cool because it says Portugal really small and subtle. And it means a lot to me. I did look for a Ronaldo jacket, didn't find one, but it is, yeah, it's a little cool. It's a little cool. Windbreaker kind of thing.
Or a fleece. A fleece is good.
Yeah. It was windy because we were on the coast, so it was very windy.
It'll be windy in the hills too. It will be. And so, especially, if you get wet, you will for sure be cold. Yeah, if you get wet, even in a rain suit, because a lot of people just hike with ponchos, which is fine, but that means you're going to get wet from here down, and you for sure will be cold. So you're going to want something. Sometimes people wear those pants that zip on and off, and so if it rains, you can zip them off. That way only your legs get wet. So maybe in your backpack you carry like a little chamois to dry off.
Carry a chamois.
That's not a bad thing to do either. They're obviously lightweight, but you just want to stay dry. But once it rains, it's cold, for sure. Anybody else? Great. Well, our contact information is on here, so just email us. Let us know where you're at. Let us know if you're in. We mostly need to know if you're in, because we want to start scheduling those meetings out so that we can, as Jay said, make a training schedule, answer any questions you guys have, and then figure out when our Zoom meetings are going to have. Okay? And then the deposit is due whenever we said. I have no idea. February something. Whatever. Yeah. Good. All right. Thanks, everybody.